Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Neighborhood Council election review for Region 1. There's a lot of information we're going to cover. And so the way today is going to kind of work is we'll go over our presentations, and then at the end, we'll have plenty of time to answer any questions that anybody has. We'll start with a few introductions. So my name's Michael Lectrich. I'm with the City Clerk's office, Neighborhood Council Election Division, and I have Naima with me. She's one of our election administrators. She'll be kind of monitoring the chat to answer any questions that pop up. But like I mentioned, we'll have plenty of time at the end of the session to go over any questions. And then we have Mayor Lou with us from Empower LA. So she'll be presenting on the outreach for neighborhood council elections. I do want to mention, so I am recording this meeting and I'll email it out to anyone who registered for it. You'll also get the slides from both of our presentations and the recording. So feel free to review that later, ask any questions. I think everybody has my email, so feel free to reach out. So with that, I'm just going to hop right in. So for today, the meeting agenda is going to be, first we'll go over the election documents, a few different key points when it comes to neighborhood council elections. We'll go over the candidate filing process. Then I'll go through the all vote by mail election model, which for 2025, it's an all vote by mail election model. Then I'll go over some election resources, including some information specific for Region 1. Then I'll actually hand it off to Mayor Lou for her presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. So with that, we'll just jump right in. So the first thing I want to talk about is the neighborhood council bylaws, which really is the source material for how NC elections are run. And so I want to highlight the sections that we refer to the most when it comes to neighborhood council elections. The first part is going to be Article 3, which covers any boundaries for the neighborhood council. This will be the boundaries of the neighborhood council as a whole, but also if there's internal boundaries, if there's shared facilities, things like that. Next is Article 4, which are the 4 different stakeholder types. This is standard across all neighborhood councils. The next slide, I'll dive into those a little bit deeper. Article 5 is the governing board, which is unique to every neighborhood council. So we'll go over which board seats there are for those neighborhood councils. If there's term limits, sometimes if there's staggered seating, it will list out what the staggered seating is for those boards. Article 10 goes over the election information. So this will cover the voter verification type, if there's any specific candidate requirements. It will cover sometimes if there's unique voting structures and things of that nature will be covered in Article 10. Attachment A is the NC map. So this is just the visual of Article 3. And then we have attachment B, which goes over the governing board structure and the candidate and voting model for each seat. So it lists each seat along with if they're selected, appointed, or elected. And then the candidate requirements for those seats and the candidate qualifications for each seat. So like I mentioned, I want to kind of just highlight the 4 stakeholder types. The first one is live. So this is anyone who resides within the neighborhood council boundaries. There's work. So anyone who provides services within the neighborhood council boundaries. There's owning property. So these are stakeholders who own real property within the neighborhood council boundaries. And then lastly is community interest. This one always kind of hangs people up a little bit. So this definition is defined as a person who participates in a nonprofit organization that has continuously maintained a physical street address for not less than 1 year, and that performs ongoing and verifiable activities and operations that benefit the neighborhood. So these are stakeholders who are participating in those nonprofit organizations that have continuously maintained a physical street address within the NC boundaries. So I just want to highlight that a little bit because those requirements are on the stakeholder along with the organization. So these are the 4 stakeholder types that are found in all 99 neighborhood councils. One thing to highlight is citizenship is not a requirement. So when we talk about candidates and voters, they're not required to be citizens to be a candidate or a voter when it comes to neighborhood council elections. So we take that information from the bylaws and we create a ballot voting model, or BVM for short. Excuse me. All of the BVMs have been emailed to all the different regions. And so I'm just going to break down the BVM real quick. So first off, right here is going to be the neighborhood council name. This is going to be the exact name that's going to be on all documents from our office. So that will be the certified list of candidates, the ballots, official results, things of that nature. Will always have this name along with that abbreviation in those documents. Next, we're going to have ballot types. So that will list how many ballots there are for that neighborhood council. This one, for example, has 9. Under that, we'll have ballots issued. The reason we have this is there's some neighborhood councils where voters can receive multiple ballots. So if that's the case, it would be listed here. In this example, there's 9 different ballots, but voters are only receiving 1 ballot because most of them are related to which zone or internal boundary they're a part of. Under that, we'll have board seats. So that will list the number of board seats in the neighborhood council and then the number that are up for election. Under that, we'll have the term for those seats. With neighborhood council, it's always a 2-year or a 4-year term. So that would be listed there. Then we'll have voting age. So voting age is always 16 years or above, unless there's a U seat. For that U seat, stakeholders 14 and 15 are also eligible to vote for that U seat. Then we have stakeholder verification type. So there's going to be self-affirmation documentation. I'm going to go into a lot of detail about those 2 different verification types a little bit later. Then we have if there's any candidate restrictions. Like I mentioned earlier, this is typically covered in Article 10 of the bylaws. Most common is going to be what's on this screen, for example, is candidates can run for no more than 1 board seat. And then we have other election-related language. What we typically have done is if there's any other kind of special requirements for that neighborhood council, we'll list that. But what we also included this year is if there's any shared facilities, shared boundaries, we included it in this section just for easy reference. And then we've also included the vote by mail period for that neighborhood council. And then under that, we just have a breakdown of every ballot. So we'll have the title of the ballot in bold, along with the qualifications to receive that ballot, which is pulled from the bylaws. And then we list out the seats that are on that ballot, along with the number of seats. So for example, this ballot has 4 different seats up there, but there might be multiple. So like the at-large director, voters will be able to vote for up to 7 at-large directors. And so that's why it's listed here. So that's our ballot voting model. If you haven't seen the ballot voting model, feel free to put something in the chat and we can make sure to get that to you. And so with that, that's kind of all the pre-stuff. And so now I'm going to go through the candidate filing process. Candidate filing for Region 1 will open January 10th and go through February 24th of 2025. Candidate filing for neighborhood council elections is 45 days. That's 45 calendar days. Candidates can apply using the NC portal or paper applications. The NC portal is open 24/7. Paper applications are available on our website in PDF fillable formats. We also have them translated into multiple languages, 13 languages, I believe. And those are all available on our website. And so when it comes to candidates, all candidates are required to provide documentation. When we talk about required documentation, we're mainly talking about three different things: a photo ID, proof of age, and proof of stakeholder status. So that's across the board. It often gets confused with if the voter verification type is self-affirmation, which means they're not providing documentation. Oftentimes people think that candidates don't either. That's not the case. When it comes to candidate filing, all candidates are required to provide documentation. So once our office has received the application, reviewed the documentation, if everything shows that that candidate meets those requirements, they will be certified. Once a candidate is certified, their documentation is deleted from the portal, so we do not have access to it anymore. We have access to our notes, but we don't have access to the actual documentation, which can have sensitive information on it. So once a candidate is certified, there is a period of time where stakeholders can challenge candidates. Let's say, for example, that someone feels that a candidate has maxed out because of term limits. A challenge can be filed, and then our office will review those candidate challenges to make a determination. So after we've gone through candidate filing, all the candidates have been certified, we've gone through the candidate challenge process, the withdrawal deadline has passed, we will release the certified list of candidates. This gets released 60 days prior to the election. So this will have everyone who will be on the ballot for that election season. We also at this time release the contact information for these candidates to the neighborhood council boards so that they can reach those candidates if there's a candidate forum or if there's any kind of election events that they want to make candidates aware of, they can do that. So that's the candidate filing process. What I'm going to do now, let me just switch my screen really quick. I'm going to go through the paper application and the neighborhood council portal for candidates. Just so everybody knows what we're looking for when it comes to candidate filing. So this is the 2025 neighborhood council candidate filing paper application. So the first part is going to be, sorry, scroll too much, the neighborhood council information. So that includes what the neighborhood council is, the seat name that the candidate would like to run for. Under that, we're going to go to candidate information. So the first thing is going to be the name on the ballot. The name on the ballot is how that candidate is known in the neighborhood. So it might not necessarily be their legal name. So for example, this candidate, their first name, legal name is Theo, but their name on the ballot is Victor. Maybe that's their middle name and that's what they prefer to go by. So that can be their name on the ballot. Next to the name on the ballot, they can enter their pronouns. This is only on the candidate website. It's not on the ballot or anywhere else. It's just on the candidate website. Then they can enter their first name, last name, birth year. So they only have to put their birth year. There's certain cases, usually it's a U seat, where we might have to get the month and the date. But for the most part, if they just put their year, that will be fine. But if it's close to like the reason I say youth is maybe they're turning they're 17, but we can't tell when they're turning 17. We might have to know a little bit deeper to make sure that they meet the requirements for that seat. So we'll just reach out to those candidates in that case. Phone number and email are optional, however, highly recommended. Should there be any questions about the application, we're able to reach those candidates. So that's why we always ask for that information. But if we don't receive it, it doesn't stop anyone from being certified as long as all the other information is there. I do always mention that if we get an application that has a name and a phone number, we will reach out to those candidates as much as we can to try to see if we can get that information we need to certify them. So it's always preferred to get a complete application, but if we don't get a complete application, as long as we have contact information, we'll try to work with those candidates. Next, we have the question, are you a current board member in this neighborhood council? Yes or no? The reason that we have this is just so we can help keep track of term limits for those neighborhood councils that have term limits. And then there's a question, initial if you agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA via text. This is optional. So this candidate liked that, so then they put in their initials there. The next area is the qualifying address section and complete all that apply. The reason that we say complete all that apply is sometimes a stakeholder might put their live address thinking it's in the boundaries, but maybe it's across the street, but their work address actually is within the neighborhood council. So, and then there's also seats where maybe you have to live and have community interest. So providing all of that information at once helps us. And so, but these are all pretty simple. It's broken down into the 4 different stakeholder types: live, work, own, community interest. They include their address. And then we have check boxes for the reason for these check boxes is because these are pretty common seats that we have. For example, sometimes there's seats for employees versus business owners. Sometimes there's seats for owners of residential property versus owners of business property, things of that nature. So next up is the documentation. So if this candidate is providing documentation with their application, they can just list it off here. So for this example, this candidate works within the neighborhood council. So they included a driver's license, which covers that photo ID and proof of age. And because they work, they have a pay stub, which has the address and a recent date of the location where they work and proof that it's within the neighborhood council boundaries. And then they sign under penalty of perjury that all that information is true and correct and date. It's really that simple. And then there's a second page that candidates can include a candidate statement if they'd like. Candidate statements have to be 1,000 characters, are limited to 1,000 characters. That's including punctuation, spacing, things of that nature. I'll get into that a little bit later. But that's the paper application. Now I'm going to go through, I'm already signed in, sorry about that. The neighborhood council portal. So the neighborhood council portal, it's the same login for candidates and voters. I'll show you that in a little bit. The good news is in 2023, to get to the portal, users had to have an Angelino account. That's not the case this election. If someone wants to go through Angelino, they can click this to sign in with the Angelino account, but that is not required. All they have to do to create an account is they hit need an account, register here, put in their first name, last name, email confirmation, and hit create. Once you hit create, an email is sent to that user with a link to create a password, and then they're able to log in. It's that simple. If you forgot your password, you can hit forgot your password, send an email that automatically sends a link where the user can create a new password. If there's any issues with that, feel free to call our office and we can help with that process. So we can help if users are trying to log in this way. If they have any issues with their Angelino account, they have to go through the Angelino help desk to get assistance there. But so I've created an account. So I put in my email and my password, hit login. And so I have candidate checked here, and I can just hit create candidate application. And the way that the candidate application is on the neighborhood council portal is it's broken up into 5 sections. So the first section is going to be the neighborhood council. So you hit select neighborhood council, and the only NCs that are going to show up are those neighborhood councils that are currently up for election. This is a test site, so that's why you're only seeing a few NCs listed here. So I'll click Sun Valley. Then you select the seat name. And just like the neighborhood councils, you're only going to see the seats that are up for election. So if there's staggered seating, you're only going to see the half the board that is currently up for election. So I'll choose at-large stakeholder. Once you choose that seat name, the requirements pop up here. This is pulled from the bylaws of the requirements for that seat, and they remain throughout the process. Next, you check the stakeholder type. It always has the 4 different stakeholder types. So I'll just put live and hit next. So as I mentioned, the requirements will stay up here. And so step 2 is going to be the candidate information. So it's the name as it will appear on the ballot. So again, this does not have to be the legal name. It can be what you're known by in the community. So maybe I go by that. Then you can put in pronouns. Again, that is optional. The nice thing about going through the neighborhood council portal is first name, last name, and email is pulled from the registration information. This is all editable. So like, let's say that I want to change this as well. You can definitely edit it, but it's nice that it just pulls that information so you don't have to type it in again. Then there's date of birth. The portal does require the month and date included. However, we understand that that can be very sensitive for a lot of people. So as long as that year shows that you exceed, for candidates, it's almost always 18 years or older, unless it's a U seat. So as long as that year makes it clear that you're 18 years or older, you can always put 0101 and then maybe put in the year. And we see 0101 and we know that we're really just focused on the year. Then there's the email. Let's say that I use this email to create the account, but I have an email that's dedicated to my candidacy. You can definitely edit that information here. If you want to, then there's the option to add a phone number. If you don't want to include a phone number, you can just hit decline to state phone number. Then lastly, you can click if you agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA via text. So you can click that or not click it. It's optional. We'll just click it. But if you don't click it, it doesn't stop you from the filing process at all. So you just hit next. So step 3 is going to be the qualifying address. When we mention qualifying address, this is the address attached to your stakeholder type. So if you chose work, it would be your work address. Let's say that you attend a church within the neighborhood council. This would be the address of that church because that's your community interest stake within the neighborhood council. So you just type in an address. And then so you can type in an address and then you can click verify qualifying address. Unfortunately, the map is not tied to the testing site. What will happen is usually if it's within the boundaries, you'll see an outline of the neighborhood council, and then it will say verified within the neighborhood council. But in this case, there's an issue with the site. I could just hit close. It's not going to stop me from submitting my application. I can still submit it, and we'll just take a look at it on our end if there's any issues. Mailing address, you can hit same as qualifying, different from qualifying, and enter a different mailing address, or just decline to state. And so with that, that's going to be the end of step 3. So when I hit next, there's going to be 2 pop-up windows. When we talk about candidate filing, it's kind of broken up into 2 major deadlines. First is going to be candidate filing deadline and then the documentation deadline. So the candidate filing deadline only requires that candidates submit their application. So what that means is doing steps 1 through 3, like I just did, and then completing these 2 pop-up windows. Once those are clicked, that means my application is submitted, and that's what has to happen by the candidate filing deadline. 3 days after the candidate filing deadline is the documentation deadline. So that's the deadline where I have to submit my documentation proving my stakeholder status and matching my application. So there's a little extra time for documentation, but the actual submission of the application has to be submitted by the deadline. So this first pop-up is the penalty of perjury agreement, along with a little blurb about the responsibility to provide required documentation by the deadline. So you can hit accept, submit. And then the next part is the neighborhood council board member candidate for election board service acknowledgement and affirmation. This document has a wealth of knowledge about neighborhood councils and is available on our website. It's a lot of information to cover, but it can always be referred to later. And it is also a part of the 2025 Neighborhood Council Election Handbook. But it is required that all candidates acknowledge this affirmation. So when you scroll to the bottom, you can hit accept and then submit. So once I do that, as I mentioned, that means my candidate filing application has been submitted. However, I still need to provide documentation. I do want to stress that our office contacts all of those candidates who have submitted their application without documentation to follow up to let them know what kind of documentation we need and try to assist them through the process. But we'll just go through the application as a whole. So we did steps 1 through 3. So now we're on the documentation step. If there's any questions about kind of the documentation that we would need for candidates can click here and it will provide a link to the 2025 Neighborhood Council Election Documentation Guide. The nice thing about the documentation guide is it breaks down different types of stakeholders. So for example, let's just click this one. So if it's a seat where you have to prove that you own a business, or if that's how you have a stake, it will provide examples of proof of business ownership. These are examples that we often see. It's not an exhaustive list. It's just an idea of things that we often see, examples of photo IDs, and examples of proof of age. But as I mentioned, this is not exhaustive. It's just a kind of starting point for things that we often see when it comes to these different stakeholder types. So you can, once I know what I'm going to upload, you'll have two areas to upload documentation. One is going to be proof of ID, and then proof of live, or whichever stakeholder type you chose. So like if you chose proof of, if you chose work, it would say proof of work here. But I chose live, so it says live. So then I'll select from the dropdown. We just have some common examples of documentation, but there's always the other option. So we can do document proof of ID. So then I can upload my file. So I'll upload my driver's license. If my driver's license is valid, and so it has my current address, and all I have to prove is that I live within the boundaries, maybe that's all I have to upload. But there might be a case where maybe it has a different address. So you can upload a supplemental document that has your address. So I can use the driver's license as proof of age and a photo ID, but we can use a different document. Like let's upload a utility bill. For my second document. And so I can hit next. So that's it for step 4. Now step 5 is optional. Step 5 is going to be the candidate profile page. This does not have to be completed at the time that you submit your application. You can honestly even submit something and then maybe a week later you realize like, oh, I want to add something else, or oh, I have a better picture of myself. You can edit this as much as you want up to 35 days prior to the election day. So you can upload a photo. So I'll select a photo. And then you can kind of edit it. Like, let's say maybe it's too much, so you can edit it. We do have all of the candidate photos are this rectangle shape. You can edit it a little bit, but we always want to keep it that same shape so all of the photos are the same. And so you can see I edited it a little bit here, and you can preview it here. Let's say I'm good with that. I can hit use this image. And then now I have the option to include a candidate statement. As I mentioned, candidate statements are limited to 1,000 characters. That's including punctuation and spacing. The nice thing about if you do it through the portal, so let's say I do, you can type in your statement, and then down here you can see how many characters you've used out of that 1,000 character limit. So it's just really an easy way to make sure that you don't exceed the 1,000 characters. So I can hit save. One thing I will say about candidate photos and statements, these do not go on the site immediately. Our office does review these prior to them being posted on the candidate website. The reason for that is it's been multiple times where candidates might upload their driver's license in place of their candidate photo. And we don't want that sensitive material out there on the candidate website. So we just monitor it just to make sure that, that isn't happening. It happens every season. It's already happened this season. So it's just a safeguard for that. So then we can hit save. And the nice thing is with the neighborhood council portal, you can log in and check the status of your application at any time. If, I might have stake in multiple neighborhood councils, so you'll be able to submit an application through the portal with that one account for multiple neighborhood councils here. Each application will have what we call a candidate tile. So you'll see the ballot name here, the NC name, the seat that you're running for, your stakeholder type, and the status of that application. So this one, for example, is certified, so I know this one is good. And then I have different deadlines here. You also have the option, as I mentioned, you can go in and change your candidate photos and statements. So you would just click this button here. You have a pop-up and you can change candidate photo and statement anytime during that period. You can also withdraw as long as the withdrawal deadline is not passed. And so that is the candidate filing application. And then I do see the question, will the photo and picture and statement be on the ballot? It will not be on the ballot. It's only on the candidate website, which is a great question because I'll show you the candidate website now. So this is our candidate website. So it will list all of the neighborhood councils who have opened for candidate filing. So let's see, I'll choose let me choose Central San Pedro. The great thing about the candidate website is it has a lot of information that's useful for stakeholders. So what it will list is it will list the seats that are up for election, the terms for those seats, the number of seats that are up for election, the qualifications to run for that seat, and the qualifications to vote for that seat. And then the candidates will be listed in the random alpha order that matches the ballots. And so as you can see here, so we have a bunch of different candidate statements, candidate photos and statements. And so if you scroll over the candidate, you can see you can read through their candidate statements. And then underneath that, once someone's certified, it will list the documentation that was used to certify them as a candidate. So that's our candidate website. This will be linked in the vote by mail instructions. We'll have a QR code that will take users straight to the candidate website. We'll also have that URL listed in the instructions, and we have it highlighted on our website as well. So with that, let me switch back to the presentation. All right, so we went through the paper application, we went through the candidate filing portal. So now I want to go through the vote by mail registration process. So vote by mail for Region 1 is going to be from March 14th to May 4th for Region 1. So I'm going to break down kind of the different steps when it comes to an all vote by mail registration process. The first part and the key part is vote by mail application is submitted. Applications must be submitted by stakeholders every election. The reason for this is bylaws may change, qualifications may change, stakeholder status can change. So stakeholders are required to submit an application every election. Once we receive an application, our office will review those applications to see if they meet the eligibility to vote based off the bylaws. So we've gotten that application, we've reviewed it, they meet the qualifications. We'll mail out a ballot packet. Within that ballot packet, we have three key things. One is going to be the ballot or ballots. Let's say that it's a NC where you can receive multiple ballots. So those would be included. You'll have instructions. Instructions will be in English and Spanish. They'll have different pieces of information, like how to vote. It will also have, like I mentioned, information on the candidate website, in different ways that you can return your ballot. And then also included in the ballot packet is a prepaid return envelope for voters. So stakeholder votes and receives their ballot. Once they do that, the ballot will be returned to our office. So there's three main ways that ballots can be returned to our office. One is using USPS with that prepaid return envelope, like I mentioned. There's also, we will have ballot boxes available throughout the region. These are specific to neighborhood councils. And then also ballots can be returned to our office. One thing I do want to highlight is for most of these steps, notification emails will be sent to the voters, and this information will be available through the neighborhood council portal. So when an application is submitted, the voter will receive an email letting them know that confirm that the application has been submitted. Once we verified that they are eligible to receive a ballot, they'll receive an email. They'll also receive an email when their ballot packet has been mailed. What's really useful about that is, let's say that I got an email 2 weeks ago and I still haven't gotten my ballot. I know to contact our office and we can resend a ballot that day to get it in the mail and make sure that that ballot is received. And then lastly, once our office receives that ballot, whether it's through any of those options, we will scan the ballot and an email will be sent to the voter to notify them that we have received their ballot. So, all right. So then I want to go through the two different voter verification types. We have self-affirmation and documentation when it comes to neighborhood councils. So, and I do see the question, are ballot boxes for neighborhood council elections different from standard general election ballot boxes? They are. I'll cover that a little bit later in the presentation. So first, the first thing that we're looking for when it comes to voter verification types is identity. With self-affirmation, the voter to prove identity provides voter information on the vote by mail application. For documentation, we need a photo ID. Most common example of that is going to be a driver's license. So next thing we're looking for is age, because there's an age requirement for all voters. So for self-affirmation, they're providing their date of birth on the application. When it comes to documentation, we need a document with the date of birth. Again, the most common example for that is going to be driver's license. Then we have stakeholder status. So we need proof of that stakeholder status. With self-affirmation, they're providing stakeholder status. So they're listing out if they live, work, own property, or have community interest, and an address of a qualifying address for that stakeholder status. When it comes to documentation, we need a document that proves that stakeholder status. So for example, it could be a utility bill. Let's say that you have a driver's license where maybe it's actually expired, but we need something showing where you currently live. A utility bill could work for that. And so I just wanted to kind of break down those two different verification types. So when we talk about registration options, we have two options very similar to candidate filing, but it's a little bit different for a few different ways that I'll highlight here. The first one is going to be online registration. That's through the neighborhood council portal. Through the portal, this will be open for 51 days for every region. That's 51 calendar days. The benefit of going through the portal is that stakeholders are able to track the application and ballot status the whole time. So you can log in at any point and you can see, oh, my ballot's been mailed to me. Oh, it's been received, things of that nature. The other option is going to be paper registration. This is actually a longer filing period as a request from neighborhood councils. So that's available earlier. The benefit of a paper application is voters can designate an authorized agent to collect applications. What that means is, I think a common example is maybe a neighborhood council is having a voter event, because we don't have election days, but maybe there's an event to highlight the upcoming election. Paper applications can be handed out, and an authorized agent can be designated at that event to collect all of those forms and send those to our office. I'll show that when I go through the paper application right now. So let me switch my screen again. And so I'll go through, this is the 2025 Neighborhood Council vote by mail application. Similar to candidates, but it's abbreviated a little bit. The first part is going to be voter information. So the first part is listing the neighborhood council. We also include a link to the Empower LA map where users can type in their address if they're not sure which neighborhood council it is. But just like I mentioned with candidate filing, if we get an application that has a name and a phone number, that's all we need, and we'll reach out to that voter multiple times to see if we can get the information we need to assure that that person meets the eligibility requirements and mail out a ballot. So the next section is first name, middle name, last name. Then we have birth year. It's only going to be in those special cases that we might have to contact the voter to make sure that they're meeting that age requirement. But for the most part, because voters across the board are 16 years or older, unless it's a U seat, as long as it's over 16, we only really need the year. Then we have the phone number and email. Just like candidates, this is optional, but highly recommended, because if we have any questions, we want to make sure that we can reach those voters, and that's how we would do that. One thing to note, so the email address listed here will receive all of those emails I highlighted earlier. So even though they didn't go through the neighborhood council portal to set up an account and register that way, because they included an email address here, they'll still receive an email address letting them know that we've received their application, when their ballot is mailed, and so on. Then there's the option to initial if you agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA via text. Again, this is optional. And then underneath that, we have the qualifying address section. It's the same as the candidate filing. We also include complete all that apply. The reason for that here is if this is a neighborhood council where voters are eligible to receive multiple ballots, the more information provided here makes sure that we're sending all of the ballots that that voter is eligible for. So this, for example, if LIV stakeholders and community interest stakeholders receive different ballots, providing that information would show us that they're eligible to receive those. Next is the mailing address, and they can just complete this if it's different from the address above. So pretty simple. And then they declare under penalty of perjury that all statements are true and correct, and sign and date. The last section is that authorized agent section to complete if designated to submit this vote by mail application. So let's use another example. Let's say that I'm a board member and I want to make sure that my neighborhood knows about the election going on. I can walk through the neighborhood, hand out these applications, fill out this section to make sure that I can collect all of them and send them into our office. So that's the paper application. Let me go through. I'll just log out to show you. It's going to be the same. The neighborhood council portal, so you can log in. So with voters, they'll click voter. And then they can create a voter application. Voter applications are broken up into 2 or 3 steps. I'll explain that shortly. But step 1 is going to be voter information. So again, it's going to pull that information from your registration. So I'll put my first name, last name, and email. Again, this is all editable if you want to. And then include date of birth, but you can, let's say I don't want to include my full date, but I know that I'm over the 18, I can just make sure to include my birth year. You can choose contact preference if it's email or phone. So I'll select email because that's my preference, but maybe I want to also leave a phone number so that if I'm not responding to my email, we have a second way to respond. Next, they can click if you agree to receive neighborhood council information from a power relay via text. This is optional, so it can be checked or not. It doesn't stop the application from being submitted. And click next. So step 2 is going to be the election information. Based off what I choose here, will determine if it's going to be a 2 or 3 step process. So if it's self-affirmation, it'll be 2 steps. If it's documentation, it will turn into 3 steps. So if I choose, let's see, Mar Vista, for example, you can see now I have a 3rd step here, which is documentation. But if I choose, let's go to Arleta, it's self-affirmation, so it will just say the 2 steps. So you select your neighborhood council. Once you do that, you choose the stakeholder types. So you can click all that apply. So let's say that I live and I work. Once you check that, underneath here, boxes will populate. So I have a residence address area now and a work organization address because I chose both of those. If I unclick work, then I only have the resident address to fill in. So I can type in an address. And once I type that in, just like candidates, you can click verify address and it will populate that address to see if it's within the boundaries. If for some reason it's not mapping within the boundaries, it does not stop the application from going through. There might just be something that we have to look at closer on our side, or if there's any questions, we can contact that voter. It's often just helpful for voters to be able to verify that they're within the boundaries. And then underneath that, let me just copy this so you don't have to watch me type too much. Voters will include a mailing address. So this can be included here. They can click verify mailing address, or it will, if a voter does not select this, a pop-up will verify their mailing address. Very similar to when you're ordering something online and you get a pop-up saying, this is the address USPS recommends. Let me just click submit and you'll see. Just like this, because that address is then confirmed with USPS. Almost everyone will probably have this pop up because this will include those last 4 digits of the zip code that most people don't include. You can choose no, use the address I provided if for some reason you don't like what it's recommending, or you can hit yes and it will just update it. So I'll hit yes. And then you get a penalty of perjury agreement. So once you hit accept, you can hit submit and that voter application is submitted. If it was a documentation required, it will just take me to that 3rd step that looks very similar to candidate step, where you just upload your documentation to your application. So as I mentioned, with each application, you will get a voter tile. The great thing about the voter tile is this will have all of that information just a quick glance, so you can see your application. So in this example, you can see here, I qualify as a stakeholder in multiple different neighborhood councils. So I have a tile for each one of my applications. So it will list out the neighborhood council name, the status of that application or ballot. So this one I can see is mailed, the name I used, the email, the date I submitted it, and the deadline to file that. So I'll have one of those for all of the applications I used. One thing to note is only one application per NC can be entered here. So for example, if, maybe I have a family of 4, and all of them are eligible to vote, all of them to file through the portal will have to create an account and submit an application that way, because I can only submit one application per NC. However, that's when a paper application might come in handy, because I can hand out a paper application to all of them, collect them, and then send them into our office. So with that, let me go back to the presentation. So we went through the application, we went through the portal. And now I want to highlight some important vote by mail dates specific for Region 1. So first is going to be the vote by mail application period, opens on Friday, March 14th. Ballot mailing will begin on Tuesday, April 8th. Vote by mail application period ends Sunday, May 4th. The deadline to request resend ballots is Tuesday, May 6th. We want to make sure that we give enough time for those ballots to get in the mail and sent and received to the voter. Election day is Tuesday, May 13th. And then the deadline to receive postmarked ballots is Friday, May 23rd. That's 10 days, 10 calendar days after Election day. As long as that ballot is postmarked by Election day, it will be included in the tally. So next is returning ballots. So I just want to kind of highlight those 3 options for returning ballots. For Region 1, again, Election day is May 13th. The first option is USPS, so that's using that postage paid envelope that's included in the ballot packet. Next, we've partnered with library and rec and park locations to have ballot drop boxes available. So these ballot drop boxes are only for neighborhood council elections. And these are located at certain facilities within each region. I'll go over those locations in the next slide. And then lastly, ballots can be dropped off at our office at any time. So we have rec and park locations and library locations in Region 1. These locations are where we will have candidate filing applications available. We'll have vote by mail applications available, along with ballot drop boxes available during those periods of time. So candidate filing applications will be available on the first day that candidate filing opens. Those applications will be in English and Spanish at all of these locations. And then lastly, I want to highlight the neighborhood council election administrators. So our office has 4 election administrators who have multiple neighborhood councils. Always feel free to reach out to your election administrator if you have any questions. Election administrators are going to be sending a lot of updates and be in contact throughout the election season. So especially starting with candidate filing, we'll send out an email notifying the board that candidate filing is opened. We send out weekly stats so that you can know how candidate filing is going. We'll do the same with vote by mail, and a myriad of different election resources that become available will also be in contact to make sure that the neighborhood council board is aware of that information. And so with that, that was a lot of talking on my part. But I'm going to hand it over to Mary Lou, and then she will present, and then we will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. I see there's some questions in the chat, so I'm sure that Naima and Michael will probably get to them while I'm presenting, or will do so at the end. And I will do so as well at the end. So as I'm presenting, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And while I share my screen, I will say I have a cat who's really active at the moment, and um, I will warn you all that he randomly will jump on my desk and on my keyboard. So I apologize ahead of time if there's some interruptions during my presentation, um, because he tends to apologize. He tends to he tends to want to jump on my keyboard a lot. So I apologize for that. Um, so with that said, um, glad to see you all. And I'm glad this is being recorded, so that you all can share this with your election chairs, your outreach chairs, many of whom I've met. I've met many of you at meetings, at events, at our regional outreach um, uh, chair meetings. Um, Pleasure to see you all on a Saturday morning. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I myself am a volunteer on my off time, so I appreciate your time on your weekends. Mary Lou Guevara, if you haven't had a chance to meet me, look forward to meeting you. Um, um, I will share my email in the chat if you don't already have it. I'm the Director of Awareness of Engagement for Empower LA. I am very easy to reach. Look forward to supporting you all, not only uh, as part of this election cycle, but in the work that you do. Um, haven't been with the department too long. I was a former NEA, worked with many neighborhood councils. I worked with Foothill Trails out in Region 1. Worked in the central area, in the South LA area, and have been a director for a little bit over a year. Happy to work with the neighborhood council system, previously in the nonprofit world, in the voting rights, civic engagement world. So happy to work with volunteers, volunteer myself. So today here to share with you all, not necessarily new information, as I've presented a lot of this information at the commission, and part of just the ongoing work that I've been doing here as part of with the department and with Empower LA, just kind of part of the ongoing work that we're folding in as part of the election engagement. So as part of our ongoing vision, is folding in a lot of the civic engagement work and folding it in as part of our election work, highlighting the work that you all do in the neighborhood council system, empowering that work and folding it in and creating it as part of the awareness and highlighting that work, to really promote the neighborhood council system, promote the work that you all do, and hopefully highlight it so that people see the power of the neighborhood council system and see it as a way to get involved in their community and as a way to advocate for their community and really as a way to get involved and advocate for themselves, and increase that engagement, and become a candidate and become a voter and bring awareness of the neighborhood council system. So what we see as a successful election, obviously, is to increase the number of candidates, increase the number of voters, and increase overall awareness in the neighborhood council system, not only as part of this election cycle, but in long term, right? To bring more people to your meetings, bring more people and more capacity to your committees in a long-term basis, and bring more people out to your events, right? So it's not just about one election, but it's a long-term endeavor. So obviously it starts now, but it's about cultivating this as a long-term endeavor. But it starts obviously with this election. So the framework for engagement for us, it starts with kind of building out these 5 pillars, which is messaging, communications around engagement, working with partners. So for us, obviously, is being part of the city family, is city and community partners, um, candidate and voter engagement, which are kind of our 2 audiences as part of this election, supporting coordination with neighborhood councils, which is the system that we're all a part of, and obviously advertisement, right? Because that helps us get messaging and furthering our impact. So obviously, what we're doing a lot now currently is messaging and communications because we're trying to reach people. Obviously, we're a smaller department in the city, and I'll be very candid and honest. We don't have a large budget. We're doing a lot of this organically. I'm very transparent about it. I don't have a large budget, probably not at all. So a lot of this is being done organically. Here in our department, we're using Social Press Kit. If you've attended our Board of Neighborhood Council Commission meetings, you've seen me present this, also known as SPK. Our social press kit is a tool that we're using. It's free for neighborhood councils. It's at a very low cost for our department. It allows us to use, for us to use it with neighborhood councils, city departments, council offices, community-based partners, so that's our nonprofits in the communities. It allows us to pretty much put together these kits where we're able to put communication together, and allows us to distribute it online, and create graphics, messaging that's easy to share, easy to download, and create regional and citywide kits that usually they're used by PR firms, communications kits. And I'll show you really quick a video. We've been sharing it already with a lot of the regions. They've been widely used by neighborhood councils. We're able to see neighborhood councils utilize them. We've utilized them in a way that it creates very easy to use messaging. We've tailored the messaging in a way that we've created general awareness. So what is neighborhood councils? Who can get involved? Where do they meet? What do they do? To create foundational knowledge about the neighborhood council system. Because what we find is that when we go out to events, a lot of people don't know what neighborhood councils are. So before we start talking to them about elections, we have to first start at, at the very basic level. What are neighborhood councils? Before we even get to ask them to run or ask them to participate in the elections. So we've created these from a foundational knowledge basis to introduce the neighborhood council system to individuals, and then introduce what elections are. So I will show you a video so that I can stop talking and walk you through. And these will be shared with you shortly after today's presentation. I will be emailing these out to you specifically for your region. These are tailored with maps, with graphics for Region 1, ready to go with content, ready for you to share on your social media sites. They're tailored, ready to go for the major, if you're on X, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook. It's not, I think it's not tailored for next door, but that's not a problem because you can download the graphics and then upload them to Nextdoor. And you can also download the content, so the text, and put it up on Nextdoor. You can also edit the text. So if you want to put up your own kind of, your own text, if you want to put up your own, I think here you can see me downloading the graphic. If you don't particularly like a graphic, um, you can you can omit a graphic if you want. If you want to, if you want to change the text on something, if you want to change a website, if you want to change a hashtag, you can. You can tailor it. The point is that you don't have to start from scratch. We've also created a copy so that you don't, you know, uh, what our neighborhood councils, what they do, all of that. These are perfect for your newsletters as well, for your websites. We've seen a lot of neighborhood councils go, I think some in the central, like mid-city, went ahead and redid some of their website content with some of this content. Um, Additionally, something that you will receive prior to filing day or on filing day, each neighborhood council has been receiving ready-to-go flyers, uh, personalized with their logo, with their branding colors. We take a look at your website. We take those branding colors. I will connect with you if I don't have that information ready to go based on your website. Some neighborhood councils may not have websites, so I will connect with you ahead of time if I don't have that information. Any information that I can't readily assess from your website, I will connect with you, particularly if I can't find your logo, or anything that I feel like I can't tailor. And we put in your open seats, any eligibility information, your website information. This is an example for the Watts Neighborhood Council. We do everything ready to go, and we included in a email that will go out. We also have been sending out emails via ENS to all your agenda subscribers, letting them know that your candidate filing is opening, and we will also send it ahead of time, letting them know about your deadline closing. I know in the past that it was done, but it was done way too late. I was aware, I've heard feedback. And any other feedback that you may have from previous elections, I wasn't around as director. I am listening, so please let me know. I'm very open to any prior feedback from previous election cycles, as many of you know. I'm all ears on that. Additional support, obviously, I'm available for one-on-one. I've met with a lot of chairs. I think I've met with over 60 outreach chairs up to now. I'm open to going out for outreach committee presentations, election presentations. I've attended a lot of meetings. Um, I have a public drive. If you've ever received an email from me, there's a link on my email signature. I've created a public drive with tons of resources and guides. If you want to contribute to it, send me material. I put it on there. It's a public drive. It's for neighborhood councils. I think, a lot of the guides that are on there, neighborhood councils have contributed. I think it's for the system. So it's just a drive that I've created with my own content and with content that other members have created. We have hard copy flyers in English and Spanish. We have door hangers that are available to neighborhood councils. We have hard copy applications. A lot of the applications that Michael just shown in all 13 languages that are available to neighborhood councils. Connect with your NEA for flyers, door hangers, and the hard copy candidate applications. We also have postage paid envelopes. So if you want any of those, you can connect with me directly or your NEA. I have advised NEAs to take some of those out to your meetings, but to make sure, please connect with your NEA so that you can make sure that they take those out to the meetings. and that they take enough quantity. Obviously, if you have an event coming up, and you need staff, I am available to go out. Um, I definitely can provide capacity at events. I myself am going out after this presentation. I'm going out to Harbor Gateway to do some canvassing and support that neighborhood council. We're doing presentations out in communities. We're partnering with city departments. We are looking, obviously we have a partnership with the Office of the City Clerk, with the public library, with their city branches, for some in-person presentations, hopefully later in the month, into February. We have some, if you receive the personnel department's newsletter, we have a running content about the neighborhood council elections, including LA sanitation. We're working with LAFD to have content in their newsletters, and we have other city departments that we're in conversation with. So hopefully January and February newsletters will have content as well. As of now, we've done Neighborhood Council 101 presentations, about 27, and we have more scheduled. These are presentations that we do in partnership with neighborhood councils to introduce the neighborhood council system and elections to community-based partners throughout the city. We also have a partnership with the Youth Development Department that is very strong, and we continue to promote youth representative seats. And we will be doing a video reel on social media that will debut later this month to promote a lot of the youth seats that are part of this election cycle. So we will continue to do that. And as I stated, we have a couple of community events happening later this month, a lot of it in the central area. We have Greater Wilshire and Greater Cypress later this month. I will be going out to the Harbor Gateway area later this afternoon, Mid-City later this month on the 13th, and we have canvassing in Central Alameda and South LA. I really want to talk about canvassing. Canvassing is when we walk the neighborhood. Sometimes it's department led, sometimes we do it with neighborhood councils. It's really, I think it's really great. It's really great endeavor when we do it with neighborhood councils. We have flyers and door hangers in our department. Highly consider it if you have neighborhood council board members that are willing or are available maybe during the week or on the weekends in the morning. Contact me. Part of a morning walk. I'm a big walker in the morning. If you make if you already have a walking routine, I'd be more than willing to join you. I could bring the flyers, I could bring the door hangers, and we can walk the community and maybe flyer and do some election promotion in your community. We can schedule the dates. I can bring some additional of our Empower LA staff members, and we can do some promotion in your community. I know that I've run into some neighborhood council members during some of those walks in the past. We can definitely incorporate that into some election awareness. So please let me know if your neighborhood council would be interested in that. And we can definitely build it into our awareness plan. Additionally, we are working with the mayor's office. Hopefully later this month, we will begin our citywide outreach. As Michael stated, as part of a pilot program, in the application, we are asking people to opt in to receive text messages from our department. This is obviously not a new thing. A lot of departments now incorporate texting into their communications as a way to increase awareness of their programs and their projects. I know that the mayor's team does this. So we are working with the mayor's team to see if we can increase awareness of the neighborhood council system and the neighborhood council elections. The mayor's office has extended their list potentially for for piloting the increase of awareness of the neighborhood council elections, and we will be seeing if it's something that we could potentially do. So we're crossing our fingers that maybe this could potentially increase awareness of the elections and the neighborhood council system. So hopefully we plan to pilot that hopefully by the end of the month, and hopefully there'll be great news on that front. And now I think for the next couple of slides, I'll be focusing on some recommended framework and tips for those of you that are outreach chairs or work with outreach chairs. The next couple of slides will focus on personalized approaches on what neighborhood councils can potentially do to prepare for the neighborhood council elections. These are areas of focus where I think that are tips that I focus on when I am asked and by chairs on what they can start doing or what they can focus on to support the department's endeavors as it pertains to increasing awareness about the neighborhood council elections. So first, I'd say, neighborhood councils know their community probably better than the department, and identifying key local partners is key. You all, work with CBOs on a regular basis. They come to your meetings. They obviously, you all provide a lot of funding via the MPG program. They come and present about projects that they provide in your community. Many of you have, HOA seats or business seats, community CBO, community seats. So creating a list of these partners in your community and reaching out to them specifically during this election time. But, I think creating a list so that you can continuously engage with them and have them as part of your communications list is key if you don't already. I know that many of you have newsletters, many of you have email lists, many of you have social media accounts where you regularly follow these accounts. So this is probably, I'm preaching to the choir here, but for many of you that are probably looking to create some of these lists, these might be a good starting points. Looking at past NPG applicants, I think when a lot of neighborhood councils ask me, how can I go about creating a list? I say, look at the city clerk's, I think, public dashboard, accounting public dashboard. Look at your past NPG applicant recipients. That's a good starting point. Look at who you've provided funding in the past, go back to them because these are already relationships that you've established. They already know, the work that you do. They already know your work in the community. Look at the nonprofits, the homeowner associations, the block clubs, the Chamber of Commerce in the community, the local businesses, go to those relationships to establish them. Let them know that, about your work in the community, make the ask, let them know that you are, you have open seats, that you're looking to share, messaging about your upcoming election, and let them know, and make the ask, let them know if you can share a flyer, if they will post a flyer, in their storefront, if you can leave postcards behind, if you could leave flyers behind, if they will share something on their social media, on their newsletter, if they will share a blurb, if you can possibly take, some of the content from the social press kit and share it with them. Just making an ask, is one way to begin, I think, sharing communication about the elections. Some additional kind of methods for awareness is starting an awareness program, engage your other board members. I think a lot of the times what I hear from election and outreach chairs is that they're exhausted. They feel like everything's on them. And I hear this from presidents as well. And I can, I think I can definitely connect with that as being awareness and engagement director. That it feels like everything's on us, especially if you're the chair of the board. And I think just bringing in and bringing in your board and kind of sharing in on some of the responsibility. I think, create an awareness program, bring in the responsibility, partner in on the responsibility. Also, bring in and partner with organizations to receive resources, share in some of that responsibility, and also I think share in that they can also share in some of that responsibility and sharing some of those, I think, awareness with their professional networks, right? Let them know that they can share out some of those resources with their professional networks, with their friends, with their community networks, right? I think a lot of the times I talk to neighborhood councils. I was just at a retreat a couple of weeks ago, and around the table I asked, how many of you have told your neighbors that you're in a neighborhood council? How many of you have told your friends that you're in a neighborhood council? How many of you have told your professional networks that you're in a neighborhood council? So, start creating those kind of like, start sharing your work around. And you'd be surprised how you can just start creating this awareness program around you without really trying too hard. I think another thing is creating an election website. I think during election time, kind of the foundational things kind of drop off our radar. One thing is creating a page or creating a site on your page, a corner on your page that's dedicated to elections. That could be, graphics, links, an area on your website that when people visit your website, they know that you're looking for candidates. They know that your neighborhood council is having an election. They know that they can click on it and they can find an application. They can find the deadlines. They can see what seats are open. They can either click on something and either go to our Empower LA election site, or even better, the city clerks, that has everything you need to know regarding elections. The point is, they need to be able to go to your site, or if you have a social media, they need to be able to go to your social media platform and see that your neighborhood council is having an election. So be mindful and make sure that you kind of take care of those basic things and make sure that people know that your neighborhood council is having an election. Um, and you'd be surprised because I'll be honest, even on our end, kind of the basic things, just kind of like, yeah, we forget about it. Um, Community and neighborhood council events. You know, if you have any tabling, any kind of events during the election cycle, make sure that you have election material there. You can count on us if you need that material. Make sure that, reach out to us. We'll get you the flyers you need. We'll get you all the material that you need. Follow up with your NEA, follow up with me. We'll get you the material that you need. But just make sure that you have it on your table. And just make sure you have it. If you need to do canvassing, like I said, don't have capacity be the reason that you don't get these events done. Because I know a lot, even on our end, as a smaller department, capacity can sometimes be the reason that we don't do or we don't schedule things. But on your end, reach out to us, reach out to me if you're short staffed, if you're short, on board members. Reach out to us first before you have to decline an invitation. Um, Social media, I think I won't spend too much, but reach out to, follow your local, community-based partners. Make sure you have a good distribution list so that when you post something, it's getting enough eyes. Share material about the election. Follow City Clerk's account, follow our account so that you get all the messaging, you reshare, um, you know, um, share the information. If you have a newsletter, make sure that you have an election content on your newsletter, promote it on your platforms. Make sure that you provide all the deadlines so that everyone that follows you knows that you have an election coming up. So make sure that you provide all the information so that who follows you is aware that that content, that you're providing that content. Voter engagement presentations and sessions. Reach out to your community-based partners to schedule presentations. We're here to provide assistance. I think this is really important. If there are community-based partners like chambers of commerce, community-based organizations in your community, reach out to them. If they have membership meetings, volunteer meetings, you can reach out to them, schedule some time on their agendas, make presentations about your community, about your neighborhood councils. Let them know that that your neighborhood council is in the community. Let them know what the work that you do, when you meet, where you meet. Let them know that you have a neighborhood council election coming up, the deadlines, what seats are open. If you need our assistance to go out with you, more than happy to join, more than happy to help you with your presentation. We have a presentation as well. If you have a chair, an outreach chair, happy to help them with their presentation. Here to assist with that as well. We have a presentation as well. So just know that we're here to provide assistance with that. But these are great opportunities to introduce yourself to partners. We have a list of organizations that we're working on. That's one of my priorities this month of January, is to work on regional lists that I can share out with neighborhood councils. This might be a list that you are already aware of, but I hope to make that list available to neighborhood councils and put it on the public drive and make them available and sort them out by region. I know it's something that's been long overdue, so I hope to have that ready by the end of January. So I hope to put that in the public drive for neighborhood councils. And advertising. Utilize, at cost, low cost messaging throughout neighborhood council service areas, like public service announcements, ads in articles and local publications, ads online, on social media publications. I know micro newspapers. I've looked into them. I know that we just had an article in the Larchmont Chronicle. I know that I've looked into micro newspapers in the Valley area. I know it's something that can be done for weekly runs, monthly runs, and I know that's something I'm still looking into. So definitely something to potentially look into if you're a neighborhood council. I know that the city has the bus bench ads, which we're still considering as a department. And obviously, if you have a community college in your area, high schools, if you have a youth seat that's open as part of this election, something to definitely look into. We are working with LAUSD. We will be sending out a district-wide publication. So hopefully that will flyer all of the high schools throughout the district. And we were waiting for the holidays to be over with, so that will take place later this month. And with that said, always open to your questions and your feedback. That's my email. It's my first and last name. And always available for your input. And like I said, I always reach out to your chairs. Thank you so much for your time. And very grateful for your morning.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary Lou. So with that, I think we'll open it up to questions. So please just use the raise hand function and we'll call on everybody in order. Tony, see you first. I don't think your audio is not working, Tony. It sounds like a cartoon character, maybe. Is it working now? We'll come back to you, Tony, to see if we can get that audio fixed. But Walter, in the meantime.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Perfect. I wanted to make sure I didn't sound like a cartoon character there.
yeah.
Really, I have two questions. First of which is, can you guys elaborate more on the flyers, door hangers, hard copy application support that is provided? I had asked that question via the chat, but wanted to raise it again. I'm guessing it's more so general in nature as opposed to specific to candidates, but I thought I'd ask to see if maybe there was something available in that regard. And then second, there was a mention, Marilu, about canvassing and getting help with that. Is that also general to the neighborhood council and the current board members, or can you explain more what that entails?
Thank you, Walter. I was just looking at your question. I was going to respond, but thank you for raising your hand. So yes, the flyers are to promote the open seats for the neighborhood council. So they are to promote the open seats for the neighborhood council. So they are branded with the neighborhood council logo, and the colors of the neighborhood council logo. Um, and they have the website for the neighborhood council. So we will print those. And they're in English, and I can also translate them in Spanish for the neighborhood council. And we can print those and provide them to the neighborhood council. The door hangers, because we had them printed through GSD and they're in cardstock, those, and we had to do one large print run. Those aren't personalized. Those are all like the same. But those have a QR code that will take the person to the city clerk's website. Those can be personalized with a Sharpie. We can put the application deadline, and the vote by mail deadline. That's the only personalization that we can do on the door hangers. And the hard copy application is the same hard copy application that the city clerk has on their as a PDF link. Did I answer your question, Walter?
Yeah,
For that
and just
question?
about the
And
yeah, I
the canvassing we would schedule. The canvassing is to promote. The canvassing is to distribute either flyers and or door hangers. And that we would schedule within the boundaries of the neighborhood council, and we would schedule it, on a day and time that would work for the board members, uh, you know, that works for the board members. And we could work with your NEA on that.
got it. So essentially, just a quick follow-up. The NEA would be the person that we would have to request the flyer or door hangers um,
Yeah,
from, and yeah,
you could also do it with me.
great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll put my email in the chat in case you missed it or you don't have it.
Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
All right, great. Tony.
Does it sound any better?
Yes, that's
Thank you. Back for Mary Lou. Probably with very little budget, it won't happen, but is the department planning on writing contracts with local CBOs for outreach support, as happened in the past? And if so, within the region, what are those companies? Unfortunately, the last election under a prior general manager, a lot of them didn't happen until like after the election. And then in June, somebody sent out a few letters and then collected tons of money. But if they're alive now, we'd love to work with them.
Thanks for the question, Tony. Yeah, I heard about that. We don't have we don't have money to do that currently. I wish we did. Because I think it would be great, with a good guideline for deliverables. with a good framework for deliverables.
That's not a problem. I just wanted to make
Yeah.
certain that if
Yeah.
there were any out there,
Yeah.
that we took this
Mhm.
opportunity, and you've been great and transparent with exactly what you're doing to ask
Mhm.
about it. What you're doing for us is vastly more helpful than all those contracts prior administration. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Yeah, no, highly agree. I think it would be great. I mean, somebody coming from the nonprofit world, I think it would be great. Yeah. Hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers. I mean, if I may add, Michael, if I could, um, we, fully transparent, we did receive a grant, through the LA 2050. Um, um, I'm crossing my fingers that we're able to get the funding through this election cycle, but as everything with the city, getting the funds is like is really hard. If we were able to get the funding, obviously that funding would go towards GOTV events. So we would be able to do get out the vote events. So we would hopefully be able to do events to get out the vote. And we would hopefully be able to incorporate, some of those organizations and do some community events and work with neighborhood councils like in communities. And I think hopefully, but that, I don't know that that would happen. But even if it doesn't happen during the election season, I think either way, we'll probably find a way to incorporate. I mean, it will benefit the neighborhood council system, obviously. But yeah, anyway, nothing to do with your question, Tony, but it just came to mind. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Glenn.
Thanks. A couple questions for each of you. First of all, I guess I've had some internet connectivity issues and I've had some gaps, went silent. So will this recording be posted on City Clerk's website or on Empower LA or both? And when will it be posted back approximately?
It should be posted within the next few days. It will be posted on the City Clerk's YouTube, but I'll also be emailing out the slides along with a link to the recording.
Okay, great.
This one.
And then I had one question for you and a couple for Mary Lou, and I can't remember the one for you. So let me start with Mary Lou. So thanks, Mary Lou, for acknowledging some of the challenges from prior years and trying to improve upon that. If I could maybe just clarify, just so we're communicating accurately with folks in our messaging on a couple of things. First of all, I do note that the boxes that were placed by the department, actually it's probably City Clerk, actually, not thinking about it. It was for the candidate filing form, hard copy candidate filing form, and the voter registration form in the public libraries. So I assume that will be done at about when candidate filing opens. But my question to you, Mary Lou, is the brochure, the flyer, the generic one, the outreach flyer. That was something that was sort of spotty in the past, us being able to get copies. I know you've offered it, but I hope that maybe it could be coordinated. So when City Clerk places the candidate forms and the voter forms, and maybe they could help out by just taking those outreach flyers and putting them there as well. So that was one thing that we saw them, but then it was late. So anyway, so that's one suggestion / question. Do you want me to go about the rest, or do you want to answer that?
That's a good suggestion, Glenn. I'll follow up with you, Michael, on that. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Glenn.
I mean, in an ideal world, they'll all appear at the same time, right? The outreach information plus the form. Okay.
Yeah.
And the second thing, Mary Lou, for your outreach efforts. So some neighborhood councils do a great job with Nextdoor and others not so much. I think the department did a great job with Nextdoor. pushing out information. And, you know, when you do it, you're doing it to all the same recipients, you know, that we are doing. Are you going to be letting the neighbor councils know, you know, what your schedule is? Like you'll do it the first day of filing or before the first day of filing? And then you mentioned, and I'm just going by the past. I don't know what you're planning to do this year, but in terms of next door, just letting us know. I'm not saying it's that it could be okay that you're doing it, we're doing it, right? But I think I'd want to coordinate it so we're both not doing it the same day, for example. And then related to that is, and you've already acknowledged the early notification system, subscriber list, getting that information out. Will that be done like right about it when candidate filing opens for the region initially?
I'll answer the next door question, and I'll admit that's probably a better question for Ava, our public information officer. So I'll try and answer it, but I'll probably follow up with you, Glenn. I know that she regularly posts, and she has posts scheduled ahead of time. I don't quite know her schedule. So I'll probably have to follow up with her. I think generally speaking, and this is from someone who doesn't necessarily have a communications background, but I'll say is, I mean, just as someone who like is online, you can never go wrong, especially now that the algorithms are so like out of whack. I think before when stuff was like in order, right? Um, it doesn't hurt to post, I would say, Glenn, because I don't think that I don't think that our department's posting because we're posting so much and we're trying to post for all neighborhood councils. And I think we're having to stagger our posting. So I would say go ahead and schedule your posting. But I will confirm with Ava. I'm gonna make a note and I will follow up with you, Glenn. Um,
Okay, not just
um,
me. I think maybe all the folks, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like,
I'll follow up with Region One, and maybe this is something that maybe we'll probably get some clarity on, because I'm also unaware on our. I know that she regularly posts, and we schedule our posts ahead of time, as I stated. So I'm not quite sure. In
I think
terms of
that
the ENS, I know that I am aware of the feedback that we received from last election cycle. So yes, we are trying to I think post, I think, closer to the opening and maybe about, I would say, I think generally I would say about a week and a half before the closing deadline for each region. So that's generally, I think, what we're going to hold ourselves to for each region. Um,
okay, and that's important because we neighborhood councils do not have access to ENS. Only
mhm,
through you and the city clerk, you know, have
mhm,
access to that. So that's invaluable. And then
mhm.
it be done, you know, and that's not necessarily people that's people who've expressed interest by subscribing to our agendas.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, and I'm also mindful, and with that said, I'm mindful of it too, because I don't, with that, even when, with that, I didn't want to, abuse that. Abuse is not the right word, but I didn't want to, I know what that list is for, and so we want to be mindful of our use of that list as well. So, mhm.
sorry, just to follow up on next door really quick, and I guess if you want to share this with Ava, um, the department probably has a list of the neighborhood councils that are using Nextdoor, and you probably therefore know who's not using Nextdoor. So just in terms of word getting out to, you know, I think it's up to 30% of the city's population at this point. So it's a huge number, over 1 million. So just making sure that everyone gets that, especially for those neighborhood councils who do not, for whatever reason, do not use Nextdoor. The only way they're going to get the information is through the efforts of the department. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and with that said, I know that we have in between election time, I know that Ava and I have discussed, now that Ava and I are working closely in between elections, we have worked with we have spoken to the Nextdoor team, and hopefully we'll have some trainings. And I know we've spoken to you, Glenn, about Canva. Hopefully in between elections, we have some workshops planned for neighborhood council leaders who may be interested in learning more about those platforms. So thank you for your questions, Glenn, and we'll do some follow-up around Nextdoor. Thank you.
All right, great. Burton. I think you're still muted, Burton.
Hi there. My internet is really, really spotty, so it's dropping in and out. I don't know if you hear all of what I have to say. I'm missing some of what you're saying. But a few questions for the NC, the ballot boxes for applications, like at our local park. There is a box out front for the general election. Those boxes that you're talking about are going to be inside someplace at the offices. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So those boxes will probably remain locked, unless there's like a local election, or a special election, not local, but special election. The actual ballot box will be inside the facility.
Okay. For giving our stakeholders information to how to sign up and stuff, is there a place we can get the links to different for applications to run as a board member or for receiving a ballot and stuff? Well, is there a particular place to go to get the links for that? And just one other question to pose to you. In a past election, some of the newly elected board members that were people we'd not yet met got elected, but we had no way to contact them to invite them to the meeting, and your office didn't have any information to provide to the president of our board to allow us an email address or a phone number to reach these people. Is there going to be a provision for, say, the president of the board to be able to get that information from you?
Yeah. So just real quickly, so when we're talking about links and stuff, we do have specific links to all of that, like a paper application, candidate information, voter information, and your election administrator will be emailing all of those to you. So you're welcome to, include those in any of your materials. And then when it comes to the contact information, we do, as a whole, release the contact information for the candidates that have been certified to boards 60 days prior. If there's special circumstances, feel free to reach out to me and we can kind of talk about things. But the unfortunate thing is that, let's say that a candidate does not provide a email or phone number, we don't have anything to provide. And that happens more often than you would know. Than I would actually like, because that information is optional. It's not required to have an email to be a candidate, but if they don't have any information, we can't provide it. But we do provide that to the president and the outreach chair 60 days prior. But like I said, if you need something before that, just contact me. So hopefully that answers your questions. So and then with that, Tony?
The key thing is really candidate recruitment. And of course, it's my fault, but we are all behind on this because deadline is about to open up for candidate mailing. You know, the dream would be if we had a Region 1 rally in the valley kind of meeting to recruit candidates, because the truth is everyone thinks of voter recruitment as separate, and it is going to be important, Mary Lou, just because of the problem of an all vote by mail election, getting the ballot. It's this election of all. Yes, voter recruitment is important, but in general, voter recruitment only happens when you have contested elections and lots of candidates, and the candidates bring the voters as opposed to us. So if we don't have contested elections and we don't have the candidates, we're not likely to get a lot of votes. So to me, it's the initial part that's really, really critical. So if we can do anything before that to round up these candidates, I think it's incumbent on all of us to try and do it. But you know, when you say you're going to provide the addresses if they do exist 60 days prior, why couldn't we get an email address as soon as someone is certified? You're not going to wait to the end of your process and certify them all in one list.
So that's why, you know, we can reach out. There's just certain regulations I want to make sure that we don't kind of violate. And so that's why I want to just talk about it, because there's just certain.
Oh yeah, and I'll talk with you later about that. But the reason I'm bringing it up now in a general context is I certainly hope that there'd be something in your materials, even if you have to go and revise the website or whatever. If you are on a neighborhood council board, you're representing the public, there has to be a way for the public to contact you. Yes, you don't have to have an email address, but frankly, it's a necessity of being able to get the information to be a board member, as well as to have people contact you about local issues. And that's why we will also like to have a special email address for your business as opposed to your personal work. And so part of becoming a candidate should actually be establishing a business use, if you will, email address that you will be using in the neighborhood council in your official capacity once elected. And I don't think that that's emphasized during the candidate registration process. Could it be, you know, well, like my Slow Tony email address is not exactly great for the city. So I got TonyWCivic@gmail. But nevertheless, you know, we get all these Slow Tonys or superhero 537s, and that in the email addresses, and that's part of the education is you're filing for a candidate. And I think you're going to have candidate information sessions too. And I hope you will send us a list of all those, maybe NC 101s will include that. But whatever it is, I think that these kind of practical things are important for candidates to know. This is before they get seated on the board, you know, from the day of registration. I don't know what we can do to fix that, but the email addresses are really important, because like we're going to have, like the Rules Committee, which I run, an open office session. Maybe do it every couple of weeks so that candidates can check in. You can talk about the campaign. You can talk about the area. We can talk about running a good campaign, positive campaign, stuff like that, and do some NC 101 if we know that the candidates are there. But we can't engage with them if you wait to deliver them all in one list later. So the sooner the better, and other people can talk with you separately on that. I just wanted to bring that up, that engaging with the candidates is really important, because we have lame duck candidates thanks to the dumb idea that all board members are seated on July 1. So they could be elected, and if they're not participating in meetings, they could just drift away and we lose them before they ever start. So it's important to get them engaged from before they're elected. Anyway, I'm panicked about candidate recruiting. And so that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely understand. I definitely hear you and understand all of your comments. We can definitely it's something I'm constantly kind of looking at how we can make it work. I do want to mention as well, I know both Mayor Lou mentioned it, but I want to mention our office as well, that if you know of any events that are going on in your neighborhood council, maybe your neighborhood council is having an event and you'd like the city clerk's office and Empower LA to table, we'd be happy to do that and happy to be there and assist people through the candidate filing process so that they can just do it all right then and there, including vote by mail. I definitely know recruitment's important, but sometimes you guys know your neighborhood council, your neighborhood the best, right? So you might know of events, and feel free to shoot those our way and we can see if we can be present and help through the process. So just as a kind of side note there. And then Glenn.
Yeah, first of all, I do want to thank you for holding this session. It turns out that this morning's LA Neighborhood Council Coalition meeting was canceled, so it worked out okay. But in the future, I would ask that you be mindful of our citywide Neighborhood Council Alliance meetings when scheduling these things. I noticed that for Region 3, it's scheduled, I think it's Region 3, is scheduled on the fourth Saturday at the same time that Commissioner Schaefer's Neighborhood Council Emergency Preparedness Alliance meeting is. So anyway, it's at the end of the process now, but I just ask, could you please be mindful when you do these schedulings? Maybe if it were like early afternoon or something, I don't know, but or even work. Anyway, just be mindful of that. So I remembered the question for Michael, and it's related to Tony's comments. And that is, and it's probably too late for this time, but maybe you put it down consideration for next time. It would really be great if there was a way that you could configure the system such that once a candidate, I'm not saying filed, but maybe once a candidate is certified, that it generated an email to the neighborhood council, or at least a designated contact in the neighborhood council. I mean, yes, we can go to the website, we can see what the status is, but then we're like checking every day or checking whenever we think of checking, right? During that 45-day period. So just for your consideration, we get that with City Clerk through the funding program. There's an automatic email when the funding charge is posted. So anyway, just an idea I had. And then just what I mentioned, what Tony was mentioning, I think it's a big issue. Fortunately, most of our candidates have given an email address or a phone number. I'm not sure if you provide both the email and the phone number, but if we don't have either one of those, you don't provide a mailing address. So if there's no phone number and there's no email address, and you don't provide a mailing address, we have absolutely no way of contacting candidates. Now I understand in some circumstances, like someone who's unhoused, they may not have a residence address, but they could still have a mailing address, right? So it's something also for you to think about, because we neighborhood councils, we need a way to contact these candidates. We can't just hope that they show up, or hope that they know to show up, or hope, some of these people get the word from the outreach, say, hey, I'll run, right? But then how do they get connected in? And we just got to figure out a way to make sure that happens, because yes, there have been people who just no-showed, and that negatively affected the ability of neighborhood councils that I'm aware of to achieve a quorum, because although they got a candidate elected, filed, they didn't show up because they probably didn't even know there were meetings, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's some law and you can't provide that to the neighborhood council, then maybe you could provide it to Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, and maybe they could then, write a letter to or whatever has to be done. So, all right, thanks for listening.
Yeah, both of those. So I'll definitely look into kind of the email, the NC notification. I'll have to it will be too late for this, but it's a good suggestion for the future. And then in those cases, it's pretty rare. But in those cases where, let's say someone didn't include a phone number or email address, but they provided a mailing address, we have what we've done on our behalf, or on the NC's behalf, we've mailed them information with contact information, trying to push them. Sometimes that's been successful, sometimes it's not. Luckily, it's pretty rare that that happens, but it's definitely something that we can kind of work into. There is restrictions on providing the mailing address at this point, but we can definitely help assist using that mailing address to contact those candidates. So I always recommend, if a candidate's not responsive, you can let us know and we can also try. Sometimes candidates just will respond to us because they've been in communication with us. So sometimes that helps. But are there any other questions? No? With that, I know we went over a little bit, but I appreciate everyone taking time out of their Saturday to be here and present. Thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'm sure I will talk to many of you later. Feel free to email myself or Mary Lou if you have any questions. You will be getting a recording of this presentation later this week. Thank you. Bye.